when they first got together, they were like, oh, we were so broke. You know, we were both making like $50,000-$60,000 a year. And I was like, 20 years ago, y'all combined income, like that wasn't that little. But either way, they still were operating from the same silos that they used when they started their relationship. They still were operating as roommates. Oh, she pays this, I pay that. I was like, y'all been married for 20 years. You got 2 kids, like in high school. Like, why are we still operating in this same way? You're still managing your money like you're only making 120 combined. You're making over $500,000 now. Like, it's a completely different game. Do you guys know that the black net worth, have you talked about this, Anton? The black net worth is supposed to be 0 by 2053?
I haven't. It's an opportunity for you to educate us. Give me the game, baby.
I mean, it's crazy. Have y'all heard that stat before? The black net worth is set to go to 0 by 2053. So
That's
we
crazy.
can take, we can take that stat for what it is, but we can also look at it a level deeper and we can say, okay, this might be an indication of what you're talking about here, which is we're not even talking about a racial thing. We're just talking about the middle class going away. Right. So if this wealth is really a chasm, right?
Yeah,
For
yeah.
a white household to have a net worth of a little over 200,000 and a black family to have a net worth of like 18,000, like that's a chasm. That's not even a gap. So I think that number is indicative of what we're looking at with this closure coming, right? Where we are going to end up losing the middle class. Like it has been, I think what a lot of people miss is they only see the economic indicators when it smacks them in the face.
Yep. That's true.
Right? So you only saw inflation really happening when you went to the grocery store and you're like, dang, why is this an extra $2? It used to only be $4. Now it's $6. Like, what? You only see it when it smacks you in the face. But for those of us who are on this live, for those of us who are paying attention, we see the economic indicators before they smack us. So we see that the middle class is shrinking. So we have an opportunity to either get on the high end of things or get stuck on the low end.
You know,
And
I was thinking about that as you say that because inflation, like the official rate of inflation, is somewhere in between 7 and 8%, supposedly, right? But for a lot of people, based off of their lifestyle, when you go into the grocery store, like you just mentioned, right? The price of goods and services is doubling in some instances. So inflation for some people, and the bag chasers, the people, people that rock with me, they understand inflation. They understand a lot of the different information that I give on a regular basis. They understand the value of goods and services. The value of your money goes down. The cost of doing business goes up. For some people, that inflation is a lot higher than 8%. But at the same time, you got a lot of people still hoarding cash. They putting it in the savings account. They only got it in a checking account that don't even remotely beat the rate of inflation. And this is one of the things that's contributing to the middle class being hollowed out because it's a lack of information, which is one of the reasons why I love having people like you on a platform. Can you give me a little bit of insight into that?
yeah, you know what's crazy about the lack of information? I feel like a lot of times the lack of information is not enough. And y'all, I look like a different financial planner. I'm going to come to you with non-traditional type of stuff. Okay.
Yeah, that's dope.
So it's not always the lack of information, but you're not executing because sometimes having the information isn't enough to make you move.
Facts.
And that really hurts me as like a leader because I'm like, dang, I can't get y'all to execute. Like I can't get you to move. And that's one of the biggest things because just having the information is not enough. Because at this point, there are no excuses. Like my grandma can use her phone to figure out whatever she wants to figure out. So there's no excuses for the rest of us. It's really not a lack of information problem anymore. Right. So what we are dealing with is generational traumas, right? We like to call them generational curses. So we're dealing with only what we see is really how we operate. But I really think that we have to learn how to execute on the information because, of course, I've watched a lot of your stuff. You put out so much content. I was like, yo, I can't keep up, but it's all
Yeah, that's
good.
what
And
everybody say.
yeah, it's all good. But the thing is, like, you guys have the information, but you have to execute. And so it sucks because I tell a lot of people, I'm like, look, go, you know, intake my content, intake what I'm telling you, and then stop because you have to make time to execute.
I agree. And the interesting thing about it is I think the biggest hurdle that I have a lot of times with people is not their willingness to even take in the information, like you said, right? The biggest hurdle that I run into with people is actually pushing them to actually execute, right? And then on the flip side, I think that it's also a barrier or like another hurdle in that people don't understand that money is a different language, right? If you are a Dave Ramsey disciple, which I rock with Dave Ramsey, I think he gives awesome and phenomenal information, but he speaks to the majority of the people that's even just trying to get to the starting line, right? And then there's another level, right? There's another level in which people execute from a financial perspective that I think that Dave is implementing, but in order to be able to speak to the majority of the audience, he has to still try to make sure that he get people out of debt, get them to the starting line, so on and so forth. What I want to do, one of the things that I wanted to do in this live stream today is I want you to kind of break down or give us some insight on how we should be looking at money when we at certain thresholds, right? So for example, if we can, right, if we can start at some point with, let's just say, for example, you a person and you making, I think they say is somewhere between 45 and $60,000 a year, right? Let's just make it even broader than that. Let's just say between 50 and $75,000 a year. And I don't know if you want to slice this whether you got a spouse or it's a household income, right? Because me personally, my wife hasn't worked in 13, almost 14 years. You know what I'm saying? So, the whole idea behind having a two-parent household versus one person, and then you got to have kids, and then you're trying to make sure you know, give up and make sure you fully fund your 401k because they raised the threshold to 20,500 this year. What does that look like for a person? How should they be looking at things? And you can take as long as you want, do your thing. I consider this your platform, mi casa, su casa, right? What does that look like for a person between 50,000 and 75, or a household between 50,000 and 75,000 a year? What kind of insight would you give to those people?
I love that you bring this up. So I tweeted a while back. I said people read Rich Dad Poor Dad and they
Mm-hmm.
think they know everything about
Yep.
money, but you don't understand that there's levels to this game, right? The same way that you operated when you made $50,000 a year, not the same way you operate at $150,000 a year, not the same way you operate at $150,000 a month. And so you have to continuously grow, right? This is why people say you have to fall in love with the process. It's a journey, all of this, right? Because it literally is a process and things should change. So I'll give you an example. Have clients, they came in, they made right at about a $500,000 a year. And this is a couple, they had been married for like 20 years. And when they first got together, they were like, "Oh, we were so broke. We were both making like $50,000, $60,000 a year." And I was like, 20 years ago, y'all combined income, like that wasn't that little. But either way, they still were operating from the same silos that they used when they started their relationship. They still were operating as roommates. Oh, she pays this, I pay that. I was like, y'all been married for 20 years. You got two kids, like in high school. Like, why are we still operating in this same way? You're still managing your money like you're only making 120 combined. You're making over a 500,000 now. Like, it's a completely different game.